Hey everybody, this is Sid Valicharla from No Real India. A little video about the current situation. I want to give the voices to the actual issue on hand, so I'm not talking much about that, but I'm very focused on one term that I've just learned how to say it actually: BIPOC, Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. Um, I have nothing much to say on the Black community or Indigenous people or even POC who are not South Asians. I am not part of that community, and I know they are well equipped to share their stories and be the authors of their own narrative. But I was most interested in POC as it deals with South Asians because I'm from there and I am from the most marginalized, oppressed community there. So I was almost wondering if just for Indians, if you can't just say POC, but there should be a distinction when you talk about South Asians, Indians in particular. It should be, are you POC or are you OPOC? Are you privileged POC or are you oppressed POC? So the point here is India has a huge systemic oppressive structure, caste system, wherein privileged caste gets the advantage of education, property holding, and also every other means available in society, to progress. And the bottommost oppressed castes are systemically, religiously, and also politically and through societal powers declined any options to read, educate themselves, or hold arms or hold property. And this has been in effect, codified and in effect since the 2nd century when Manusmriti, a code of laws by Manu, were put into place. So that's the distinction I want to make. I mean, there is a recent constitutional power given to these oppressed communities to get educated, to hold power, and to hold property, but it's very minor, and even then there are huge backlashes, especially similar to what I heard recently when I'm learning about Black America, that when Black Wall Street was created, it was bombed. When Black communities are created with their own economic societies, they're kind of brought down to make sure that Black people are always dependent on white people and never get any better than white people, are never come into contention with them. So they don't even allow them to stand on their own 2 legs. Similar is the case with the oppressed communities, though there are some constitutional powers. The systemically Hindu religion, which propagates caste system, comes in the way, and most Indians follow that system of society. So that's where I wanted to make a distinction between BIPOC for South Asians and accepting South Asians as people of color. Almost seems like it's a little nuanced there. You gotta really be careful as to who you accept as people of color and who you see for their privilege. I'm not saying that some of the brown Indian folks are not discriminated here. As kids, maybe the white kids pushed them away, didn't allow them into their teams, or even now maybe I've heard of people calling Indian kids as like the kid who brings curry, or they smell, and then commented on the red dot that they use, the bindi, etc. So I'm not dismissing all of that stuff, but I'm much more interested in those who now are showing up as with the banners which say South Asians for Black Lives Matter. That's good, but I want to help out my Black community here, who I relate with as another oppressed member of another oppressed community. When South Asians come and chat with you guys and say we are in solidarity with you, just check in and think, are they, because most Indians who will show up there and call themselves South Asians are mostly privileged caste people who have come here for better opportunities than the better opportunities that were there in India. So they're here for the dollars, and they're here for higher education and everything, and they were very, very privileged to do that in the first place. So just check in with them. And you know how we are asking white people to say, are you not racist? or are you actively anti-racist? You can ask the same question to these privileged caste Indians who show up with South Asians for Black Lives Matter posters. Are you just not casteist? Because in America it doesn't make sense to practice, because you need a big chunk of majority of people to discriminate each other on caste basis. So maybe that's why they're not casteist. But the question is, are you actively anti-casteist? That you can ask them, because that's a question of principle, which tells if they are actively against oppression. So that's a question you can ask. And also another easier way to understand if the people you're interacting with are really in principle standing for liberty, equality, and fraternity is if they believe in the ideology of Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar is India's most recent, most modern emancipator of the Indian untouchables. He dedicated his life for their upliftment, being himself an untouchable. So when you ask that question, and if these people, South Asians, say, well, yeah or not, then their inability to right away say that yes, they are Ambedkarites, or they follow Ambedkar ideology, or they believe in it, should tell you something, because that shows that they're not up to par, up to snuff on their own systemic oppression. But it's almost like in this BIPOC era, they've won a second time the lottery of being the right color in skin and are siding with Black Lives Matter, but actually don't really understand and have put in the effort to do their self-work, internal work, and also come to this fight for equality for everybody, for justice and peace, with the right set of principles, but much more in a bit of just getting caught up in the swing of things, in the flow of things. So they need to do some work. But again, like I said, an easy way to check in with South Asians is to ask if they are actively anti-casteist or not. And even if they're in America, and they might be like, well, in America it doesn't happen, but what are they doing to help anti-casteist movements back in India? If their parents have come here and settled here, or if they themselves have come here, much like white America has been built on unpaid labor of black slaves, Indians, privileged caste Indians' whole life and property has been built by unpaid, bonded labor of the oppressed castes. So they may say we are not in India, but well, what are you doing for all the benefits you got because your privileged caste ancestors got out of being back in India and oppressively taking gain of the labor, lives, and just the society that is systemically oppressive. So those are very, very valid questions, and those who are in the forefront of Black Lives Matter are very much encouraged. It's a right to ask, but it's also they're encouraged to ask these questions of South Asian Americans. And deep inside, some of those who are in Black Lives Matter do know that South Asians have been racist towards them. Even if it's not the person who you're talking to who has now held the poster, you know of some South Asian person who has actually been racist and on par with white people, if not more. So it's okay to ask that question, and actually it's a right of you to answer the question, so you know who you're accepting as allies. So please, I just thought it's an important distinction I had to make. While not taking away from the Black Lives Matter movement itself, I just wanted to pass knowledge and awareness, and I know that it's very important to have the right knowledge at the right time when the movement is still building, to be able to discern who a right ally is and who allies are who are actually on the right path, who believe in the right principles. So I hope this helps, and I'm always available at No Real India, KNOWREAL India, on Instagram for any further discussions. So please hit me up. Thank you.